So, as we're back on the topic of dragons, what are each of your favorite dragons from pop culture?
Honestly, my favorite dragon from pop culture is probably Falkor.
Falkor?
Oh, I thought
Lost
somebody
dragon?
might say Falkor.
Yeah. I just like him because he's not a dragon like I think dragon, right? So
Because he looks like a dog, that's why. I got to cheat a little bit on mine because it's not strictly pop culture, but I think my favorite dragon is the red dragon, which is on the Welsh flag. If anybody's ever seen the Welsh flag,
Oh, yeah.
Because the story, which I'll probably ruin, a historian will be annoyed at me, is that that is their symbol because the Welsh red dragon defeated and killed the English gold dragon, which immediately gets my brain going because now I'm like King Arthur type Westerosi vibes of like a gritty type of campaign of where you're on one of these sides and ultimately this battle will happen. You might be just a soldier in the fray, you might be over here, you might be over here, but I'd want to dive right into that.
I just think though that the English gold dragon died because it was trying to spell red dragon and just expired by the end of it because he had to do it in Welsh.
Right.
Yeah. I would probably say Jim Treliving, just because he owns Boston Pizza.
Okay, sure.
He's on Dragon's Den.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Franchise king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only downside is his son owns the is the general manager for the
If
Flames.
you're going to go with this joke, the correct answer is Arlene Dickinson. So, but that's fine.
I don't watch Dragon's Den.
But that's fine.
Were you stalling to look up
Yes,
Dragon's
I
Den?
was, yeah.
I can make a joke here, but let me do my research first. You pathetic piece of shit.
And I haven't heard Jim
Just because you do your research beforehand doesn't make you
I didn't have to
less-
research Falkor, you piece of crap.
It's a Mimic, the round table Dungeons & Dragons discussion, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to another episode in our discussion about dragons in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Dan, and with me today are Adam and Terry, and this episode is called Alternative Dragon Powers, Life Beyond Breath. We've previously covered all the chromatic and metallic dragons that you could find in the 5th edition monster manual, as well as all sorts of dragon-related creatures and templates. You can find all of these episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and dozens of other podcast apps, or you could jump over to YouTube and dig into the entire playlist on dragons that we've built there. This episode, though, is something that's cropped up as we started getting excited for the upcoming release of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which I think is set to be 5th edition's Draconomicon. We got to talking about what may or may not be included in the book, and, well, there is a lot of dragon history that could be dug up, reflavored, or outright ignored from D&D's past. Specifically, though, we got interested in dragons that don't yet exist in official 5th edition lore, and optional mechanics that might be used to flesh out the lackluster dragon stat blocks that we've complained about oh so often on this show. So we went away for a few days and we did a little digging into the different kinds of draconic powers that Wizards of the Coast might be hiding in their cloaks. Now we may be way off the mark about what's to come in the next book, but at the very least, there should at least be some great draconic inspiration for all you listeners. But before we get started, I want to ask you guys a simple question, so let's grab the dice.
I grabbed the green one because it's a dragon episode.
I got the red one because it's a better dragon and it goes faster.
I grabbed the black one.
I think we all grabbed our favorite chromatic dragon.
No, this should be silver.
Chromatic.
Chromatic.
Yes, this should still be silver. What is the one thing you think is missing from dragons so far in this edition?
Okay.
I got an 11.
16. Clearly auras.
Auras, yeah.
Clearly. The Frightful Presence aura alone should freaking hit for at least adult and ancient.
Well, I mean, Frightful Presence kind of exists, but not really in 5th edition.
5th edition dragon stats?
They have a frightful action that they could take.
Yeah, but it needs to be an aura. Everybody nearby needs to suffer this aura.
I completely agree. Terry?
For me, it's long-term goals and agendas. Not necessarily methodologies. We get a lot of that. But what do they want? Why are they here other than their hordes? Like, we need serious detail on why are they even here? Why have they not just succumbed to death or something?
Yeah. For me, and I'm really hoping Fizban's accounts for this, is spells. We have draconic-blooded sorcerers, but dragons in 5e can't cast spells. It's absolutely bonkers to me that is the way it is. So I would love to see spell lists. I mean, in previous editions, they straight up cast as clerics or sorcerers. Why the hell not now?
Even that, yeah. See, my mind at first went to just like Wizards Arcane, but why not Warlocks? You know, why don't you have a Warlock dragon?
Exactly.
Perfect.
Right? So I would love to see some spell slinging happening here because they're arcane by nature. Why the hell don't they have spells?
Exactly.
Okay. Now, there's going to be a lot to unpack about all of the dragons that we've got covered. So let's start with the easiest and most straightforward to understand. We know that the new book will be covering gem dragons, but there's already a publication that has been released for 5th edition. Sure, it's not a Wizards of the Coast product, but most people still consider it pseudo-canonical. I'm talking, of course, about Matt Colville's Strongholds and Followers. Adam, I believe you drew the short straw on this one, so you had to dive into this psionic powerhouse. So what do you got for us?
Yes, psionics. Now, Dan, you and I have bitched and complained more than once about the inclusion of psionics and how the way that they've done psionics in 5th ed so far in the main books has been just psychic damage. It's still the basic. It's not psionics, which are its own resource management and its own kind of PowerPoints. Well, Matt Colville went back to that because he's a purist and a classic fan of older editions as well. So he went back into psionics, and it breaks down how to do it. But before I get into that,
will this change my mind that when an edition brings in official psionics, it is the jumping the shark moment for an edition?
Well,
because it's always downhill. 3.5 brought in psionics, and within 2 years, the edition was done.
The only thing with psionics are these gemstone dragons in this non-official book.
Okay.
So, jump the shark? No. It's an interesting rule set, and it's going to fuck with your players when they run into it. So, let me get into the gemstones first. First of all, they're older than other dragons, okay? And they've changed physically as a result of the fact that they are like eons older than even chromatic and metallic dragons. Some have actually let their wings grow limp and atrophy over time, and so they don't necessarily fly or have the like emerald dragons don't have front limbs. They look like wyverns. There's technically bone structures, but it's like within their bodies because they've just
got little T-Rex arms.
No, not even anymore. They're just like wyverns. So these guys hoard knowledge instead of treasure, and they're all focused on what's called the timescape. So they're looking at protecting the idea of reality. They have alignments that are all neutral. And when I say neutral, I do mean neutral. Even if they're neutral good, it's emphasis on neutral, not emphasis on good. They are here for balance. That's the whole thing, balance and knowledge. Now, the thing about it, which is really interesting in the book, is he makes a point of saying that they're not carbon-based life forms. They're silicon-based life forms, which is why they grow gems out of their bodies.
Okay.
But it also makes them prone to these psionics, but also very weak to psychic damage and attacks. So they're all vulnerable to psychic damage.
Oh, cool.
They're also hunted for their gemstones that grow out of them. So they're very rare, and they tend to stay hidden. They have higher dex and AC, but fewer hit points than your regular dragon at the different ancient, adult, young, and wormling. And it does still follow those 4 tiers as well.
Okay.
Because it's built for 5th edition. There's no such thing as a preferred terrain or typical lair for these guys. They've transcended that.
Weird. Okay.
Emerald dragons, again, are a unique one because of the way that they view the plains and what. I'll get into that in a sec. But they like water and aquatic.
Okay.
But nobody else really has a layer or a geography for them. They're all telepathic, and they all have psionics. Like I said, they're all vulnerable to psychic damage. But that's rare enough that it's not a big deal in 5th edition. But my favorite thing about them is that they don't have breath weapons. Instead, they have auras.
Weird.
They also all have a legendary action called Psionic Shift that sends out a wave of psychic energy. And I thought this was neat. It forces an intelligence save, which will be a different save depending on the dragon and the age of it. Right?
Yeah.
And it does force damage and knocks nearby creatures prone. Then the dragon can move up to half its movement speed away.
Is this a legendary action to do this? Cool.
And they all have the ability to do that. Emerald dragons are the first one that I dug into, and they're concerned with the idea that the mundane world sits in a place between other worlds, which is why it's so chaotic. They are all experts on the plains and are kind of aquatic themed, like I mentioned before. And they look at how the coastline specifically, land and sea interact with tides and waves and currents as to kind of give them an idea of how the planes work as well. Part of their lore says that water dampens psionics, which I thought was a neat
twist.
Yeah, that's a neat little detail. So the Emerald Dragon has foregone physical traits in order to become experts of psychic traits instead. There's also the detail that their wings can take them to the Sea of Stars, which lets them go plane hopping, but we don't get a mechanic for this.
Is the Sea of Stars just another name for the Astral Sea?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
In 5th edition it is. It is absolutely not in previous editions.
In previous editions, that's where we get Mind Flayers and Beholders and stuff from, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the far realms, I guess.
Kind of.
Yeah.
The planes work differently in previous editions, so... Emerald Dragon...
Is it a tree or a disc, Adam? Is it a tree or a disc?
This is where people start asking too many questions about something that isn't technically real. It's like we barely understand our own physics, okay? We can't make it up, you know?
But that to me reinforces the fact that we need to make it up because I want to understand something, and I don't care if it's fictional. At least I'll understand it.
That's so sad, Dan. Anyways,
I'm no physicist. I'm not like Neil deGrasse Tyson knowing how like stars are gonna die and when.
I am 90% certain that man just has an encyclopedia that's just beside him, and he's a Twitter troll.
I think he's brilliant.
I think he's hilarious. I think he's well spoken. I wonder, like,
there's a little bit of Mr. Burns, like, who am I going to troll today?
Yeah, and I wonder, like, with the other physicists, like in the world of science and whatnot, I wonder how they think of Neil deGrasse. Like, is he a good like face for everybody and a good PR guy, or is he just that guy that he gave up like 15 years ago and he's just dicking around on the internet now?
Yeah.
I will never forgive him for being like one of the lead guys who decided Pluto's not a planet anymore.
Well, what qualifies you to decide whether or not Pluto's a planet?
Opinion.
Right, brilliant. Okay,
Yeah,
Dan's on this side.
Just my opinion.
Dan's on the side of my opinion outweighs your fact. Okay.
Yeah.
In this regard, yes.
It is 2021, and this is a dangerous conversation.
Let's not go down.
Anyways, back to dragons. So Emerald Dragons have an interference aura, which forces an intelligence check every round to maintain concentration spells. So if you're within the certain radius of the dragon, depending on how old it is, the ancient or adult or whatnot, you have to maintain concentration, and it's so much more difficult just being nearby it because it's psionically like hitting you with like waves.
So Emerald Dragons have a aura of grant ADHD. No. Check.
No, it's not so much that. It's like if I stand behind you while you're trying to give a lecture with an air horn.
But I can still swing sword, right?
Yes, you can still swing sword, and that's what's important. The other thing is that they've got lair effects that include the spell Thunder Wave.
Cool.
Each one of them has a lair effect, or they have 3 lair effects. 2 of them are psionic things, which I'll talk about in a sec, and one of them is a spell effect, and this one is Thunder Wave. And the regional effect is that anyone who's asleep within 12 miles of their lair dreams of tidal waves, starfish and crustaceans, unending depths, or white skies over calm waters, and the waters are filled with constellations.
As someone who has nearly drowned 7 times in his life, fucking no.
Okay. Fucking 7 times?
Yes.
What the fuck?
No, okay, look.
I'm not a strong swimmer, and I married someone who was in like her varsity swim team.
Oh yeah, we'll do
Was that strategic just because you wanted to
110%. Yeah.
We'll do that.
One of our bonding activities was her attempting to teach me how to swim, and it did not go well.
Oh, God.
Anyways, on to ruby dragons. They're concerned with preserving the nature of reality. They, alone, understand that illusion magic needs to be kept in check because if it gets too powerful and it gets like 10th level or higher illusion magic, it will actually start to rewrite reality and could replace the reality that we know. And it like that holds up too. If you go looking in the spells, all the high level illusions are like, this will become permanent after a certain amount of time, and this will interact with the world and not just be like a minor illusion, like a hologram, right? Like,
no, I dig it because it's there's parallels with like our world with like people doing Neuralink, and now everybody's trying to be immersed in VR as much as they can.
Yeah.
And that's all illusion, right? So yeah,
these dragons are slow to speak, and they're also slow to trust, and they require you to show them respect if they're even going to pay attention to you. But again, they're not hostile; they're neutral. You're never going to find one, and if you do and you don't approach it properly, it will just leave. And as its psionic shift, just say, everybody, down you go, I'm out. These guys have an aura called Amplification Aura, and it allows nearby allies to increase their saving throw DCs. So anytime that you do anything that triggers your opponent to roll a saving throw, your DC goes significantly higher by like 6, I think, for the
Cool.
ancient dragon. So
That's insane when you start considering the fact that we're playing an edition that has bounded accuracy.
yeah,
Right? Where a +6 is significant.
but it's also interesting that it doesn't do anything by itself. It needs allies in order to.
Yeah.
But also that's great for the minions, right? Because if you're like, don't worry, I'll fireball the minions turn 1, round 1, whatever. Like it's.
Look at this guy reading a bunch of 4th edition shit. Now he's throwing around words like minions. I'm proud of you.
What do you mean?
Minion is one of those descriptors
Oh, okay.
in 4th edition.
Well,
Everything, if it has a 1 hit point,
We have
it's a
talked
minion.
about minions enough on this podcast.
They're our favorite part of 4th edition.
Anyways, so the lair effects for these guys includes casting Dispel magic that automatically ends spells of 5th level or lower. And their regional effects are that people who sleep within 12 miles of them dream about people and places that they know transforming in negative ways.
Gross.
Yeah, so I really, really like the fact that all of their regional effects are just when people are asleep, they dream things. Every one of them is like that. Sapphire dragons are like the timekeepers who understand how to traverse and summon creatures through time. They like dwarves. They're wary of elves because of elves' magical abilities to and their long vision. Dwarves stay low to the ground. They keep their eyes on the prize and they just go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And elves are dreamers. They're like, you're gonna fuck with things. Don't do that.
Yeah.
They're also super willing to help with time nonsense if adventurers can prove that there's a threat that's deadly enough. So if there's a big enough threat, you can go to one of these sapphire dragons and they're going to say, yeah, okay, I'll help you. We'll summon an ancient wizard from 300 years ago, or let's talk to your future selves, or whatever. And like, they'll get up to shit.
I love that. That's the bard when everybody shut the fuck up, I'll do the talking. We only get one shot at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're also the oldest of all the dragons, and even the young ones, like the wormling sapphire dragons, speak like university professors would, which is just infuriating, I think. These guys have what's called an awe aura, which forces attackers within 30 feet to succeed on a charisma save or immediately end their turn. Succeeding, though, means that you're immune for a week, which is odd. We almost never get a week as an increment of time in 5th edition. So, and the idea here is that when you go to hit it, you have to make a save, or you are just awed by the magnificence and the beauty and the sheer power of this dragon, and so you stop in your tracks. You're like, I can't hit this guy.
So it's an AWE awe, not an AWW awe, where you miss your turn and you go, aw.
That's correct. It's also not an A&W where you just get a teen burger. Their lair act, that was a Canadian joke, by the way. So
Yeah.
the lair actions include the ability to just plane shift away whenever they feel like it. And their regional effects make sleeping creatures have dreams of their past or their future. And these dreams are memories or prophetic dreams. So, topaz dragons are most likely to be encountered, but they're like absent-minded professors who are obsessed with magic. They like to hoard magical items for categorization, but they often restructure their hoards over and over until it's deemed perfect. And every time that they say, "Oh, I could do it from like large to small instead of from small to large. All right, we're starting from the beginning. No, I'm going to do it alphabetically. No, chronologically based on when it's made." So they're always fucking with their hoards over and over
This
again.
is you with your bookshelf.
No, I very much have a method.
Oh.
I've used the same method since I was like 13.
This is me with my bookshelf.
Yeah,
okay.
that's more like it. These guys rarely give a straight answer, but not because they're difficult. They're just not really experts of anything because they're constantly quoting, referencing, forgetting, arguing, and imagining what the answer might be.
They're podcasters.
It's not even that. They're Redditors. They're like, what's my opinion today?
That's my opinion this week.
So, they have an aura called Uplift Aura, which gives nearby allies a major boost to intelligence checks and saves.
Awesome.
One of their lair actions lets them remember Counterspell and then cast it as a reaction. So
Is it phrased like that?
Exactly like that. So I can sit there and be like, oh shit, how do I do this again? Counterspell. So lair action, right, which you use at the end of somebody's turn, and then a reaction, which you hit, whenever you want after an action is done, right? So they go, wait a minute, how do I do this? So whoever comes immediately afterwards, you want to be directly after these guys in initiative order, because they're not going to be able to bang hit you with this, right? The regional effects affect dreams again, and they make people dream of ancient lore that they don't know. They also have conversations with old sages in their dreams, even if they don't share a language in real life. So it's kind of like teleporting back to see a hologram of, or have a conversation with someone or something important that happened years ago. Amethyst dragons are the last ones, and they are the renegades of the group, often manipulating mortals into doing tasks. The other gemstone dragons allow these guys to do their shit because it helps them with their understanding of the timescape and whatnot, but they don't particularly like it or support it. Amethysts are sinister. They're scheming, and they're often going to take the form of mortals to infiltrate magical schools and colleges and nudge mortals towards outcomes that the dragons want, even if that results in the death of a wizard. They don't care. They are seemingly respectful and agreeable when you first meet them, and that's just a manipulation tactic to get you to let your guard down. Because respect equals trust, and trust is a short path to dependence. And they want you to depend on them. The last sentence in the book on these guys is they cannot be trusted.
Cool.
So these are your neutral evil.
Cool.
They have a feedback aura that forces all nearby creatures to make a high intelligence save every time the dragon takes damage. And if these creatures fail, they take a pretty decent amount of psychic damage. So if you hit me, it's going to radiate waves of psychic damage out to hit everybody around me.
Quick question: can they turn the auras off? As in, if I'm friends with the dragon and I'm fighting alongside of it,
it doesn't necessarily say that, but because some of them only target allies, I would say that yes, they can control this.
Right.
Now they have lair actions that include an ability that shifts the terrain using illusory magic. It's not hallucinatory terrain; doesn't act like the spell does. It just makes the terrain look like it's a difficult terrain.
Cool.
So until the end of the dragon's next turn. The regional effect is that nearby dreamers imagine lavish parties with a charming host who can totally, absolutely, 100% be trusted with your secrets. Don't worry about it. What do you got?
Yeah.
So
what's the juice?
Yeah. So it's pretty sketchy. I like these guys as villains, and that's honestly their personality is just how I run a lot of my own villains.
Yeah. They basically are the CEOs of TMZ.
They feel like Jafar almost.
Yeah.
So psionics. They all get psionics. And here's generally how it works. There's some nonsense about how the gemstones translate to psionics and stuff in the lore. Sure, that's great. You need gemstones to be psionic. If I'm going to hand out a magic weapon, it'll be with a gemstone from a gemstone dragon, right? If I want psionic shit to be out there for people to play with, for my players. But for the most part, it breaks down to this. You get a set number of charges. You use these charges to cast from a special list of spells. These are the psionic manifestations. But at the end of every one of the dragon's turns, you roll a die. It's a d4 for a wormling, all the way up to a d10 for an ancient. And that is how many psionic points, essentially, that you get back. You recharge your psionics. Every gemstone dragon also has a fracture number. And it's like for an ancient, I forget, one of them is a 32. And the idea here is that if you do 32 points of damage in one hit, one of the gems fractures. And so you got to roll one of these dice again to find out how many psionic points you lose.
Huh, okay.
Now, there are a number of different psionic spells here, these manifestations. I like a lot of them, but some of them are definitely more powerful than others. But they're worded differently. You can tell this is not Wizards of the Coast. This is Matt Colville and his team doing it differently. They all have, a casting time. They all have a range and a duration, but they also have charges. And these charges are, how many psionic charges are you going to use. So you can just, by looking at them, tell what's going to be expensive and powerful or what's going to be kind of cheap and easy. For example, one of them is called Distance. It's only one charge, but one charge per target. Space contorts and twists. Choose any number of targets a dragon can see within 30 feet. Each target must succeed on an intelligence saving throw or be pushed back 30 feet.
Okay.
That's one. Charge 20 for another world. So you know it's going to be powerful. And it says, what if things had been different? Maybe in another world, I'm the wizard and you are the fighter. Target 2 enemies. Both must succeed on an intelligence saving throw or else swap character sheets until they take a short rest.
Huh.
So there's some interesting things in here. Another one is called The Real. Charges 4. The dragon sees the real reality. It can tell what is an illusion, and it sees invisible creatures and creatures hidden or disguised by magic. Magical darkness does not affect it, and it can see into the ethereal plane.
Oh, okay. That's going to make your Grimstalkers upset. Gloomstalkers upset.
Yeah, and your Horizon Walkers and,
Yeah.
and whatnot as well. So let me see if I can grab another one. Sympathy. So this is the last one. There's a bunch of them, but Sympathy. Charges 2 per D8. The dragon violently reacts to being hurt, raking its enemy's nervous system with sympathetic psionic vibrations. As a reaction to taking damage from something the dragon can see within 30 feet, the dragon expends charges to force the damaging creature to make an intelligence saving throw. On a failed save, the target takes 1d8 psychic damage per 2 charges spent. So if you're an ancient and you've got like 25 or... Hold on, let me look. The Ancient Emerald Dragon has 24 charges. So I can hit you with 12d8. Bang, don't hit me again. Right, psychic.
Yeah. Well, have fun with that, Bear Totem.
Yeah.
The maximum damage this can deal equals the damage dealt to the dragon that prompted this manifestation.
Okay.
So it's within reason. You do this to me, I'll do it right back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really cool and interesting powers in here. I don't know why we didn't just make this another spell list.
I think it's just because gem dragons have always had that flavor of being psionics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you.
This also came out before we got into all the psychic shit that came in late. Like
right.
this is mid edition that this was released. So there is another dragon, however, in Strongholds of Followers, and it's called the Oleander Dragon, and it's actually part of the Fey Court.
Cool.
This looks like it's made out of wood and is covered with a plethora of white, yellow, pink, and purple flowers. It has large floppy ears like a Cocker Spaniel and a long tail that flares out at the end. This, however, likes to imitate others as a means of flattery. And this dragon is the Oleander Dragon. She is the only one of her type. She doesn't like to speak except in monosyllabic noises because language is underwhelming and boring, which is very Fey.
For monosyllabic sounds, they're not boring at all.
Right.
I hate her.
Well, fine. Yeah. So she actually does like to imitate others, but this is done as a means of flattery. So she will actually take the form of another person. If you walk up, she will take the form of you and bow deeply to show that, she acknowledges you. She has no teeth or claws, and she never physically attacks because it's beneath her. Instead, she tries to inspire others to abandon violence and hatred by overwhelming them with her beauty and inspiring awe and personal reflection. And if that doesn't work, she's got other more direct tactics and mechanics. So she has psychic resistance as opposed to the Gemstone dragons. And she's got false appearance, so she looks like a tree or a shrub unless she moves.
That's cool. I really like that.
But she also has Implant Nightmare. A target she sees within 60 feet confronts their deepest fear and becomes frightened for 1 minute on a failed save. At the beginning of the dragon's turn, the target repeats the saving throw or takes 4d10 psychic damage. So you'll notice that you don't sit there and try to, at the beginning or end of your turn, which is normally how it works, you roll to see whether or not this effect goes away. At the beginning of the dragon's turn, you find out if that 1 minute resets.
Oh.
If you don't want to do that and just suffer through the 1 minute, you take 4d10 psychic damage every round.
So violence is beneath her, but causing PTSD is absolutely fine.
Absolutely. Fey logic, man.
You're right.
She's got a pollen breath, which is a 60-foot cone charm effect. And she also has once a day the Song of Sestelani, where she sings a magical song that forces an intelligence save or does 48 plus 4 psychic damage and stuns the creatures for 1 minute. Of course, you can repeat the save after every turn. That's per usual.
Yeah.
All right. But the idea here, every one of these things is to get you to stop and don't fight. She is completely a pacifist.
I mean, insofar as shutting somebody down for a minute, slowly destroying their brain with frightened.
This is my least favorite kind of person.
I mean, she doesn't really want to fight. So
Nah, she's that type of person where she's like she'll say things but do contradicting things.
I mean, she's Fae.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I still don't like her
Okay, fair. Well,
because of that.
Let's grab our dice and let's go on here. Let's talk about these guys in total. What do you guys think of the Gemstone dragons? How they are mechanically built out, and specifically, like, none of these guys really have a breath weapon. I mean, the closest thing we have is
The pollen breath.
the pollen breath. So, like, what do you guys feel about a dragon that has no breath weapon? Or basically, are these guys interesting to you?
Right.
So
1.
3.
I'm going first with a 5.
Nice.
That's sad, guys. I actually really like these guys. I don't know why they're called dragons.
Yeah, they're a separate creature entirely. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would be really neat to add any one of these aspects to an already existing dragon.
If you made it a unique name dragon, yeah. I don't think, like, stock straight up that all...
I don't mind the idea of the silver dragon, for example, who is this paragon of good, would have the oleander. I mean, I'd reflavor it, but like that song that gets people to essentially stop
Sure.
in their path, right? So does a little bit of psychic damage, but it's really like, everybody stop, you're stunned for a minute, we're going to talk, right? I feel like there are some interesting mechanics in and around these. I like all the dreaming stuff. If you're going to be around big ass magical creatures that like shape the world, which is what dragons do by lore, but not by mechanics, I like these regional effects. I'm going to start to add that in. Like, giant legendary creatures for me are going to warp the dreams of nearby creatures.
Yeah.
Especially if there's anything psychic or weird like a beholder.
That seemed very well thought out. The dream descriptions, I really like that too.
Yeah, I also like that the lair actions give you things to do. It's not like, oh, you build a wall. It's no, you cast a manifestation or this manifestation free of charge, or you end up casting this spell.
Cool.
And I also really like the idea that these guys are keepers of reality.
Yeah, they're basically, for those who have watched Loki, they're like the TVA of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, a little bit. It's definitely interesting to see this, and I like that for dragons who are long lived and see the like long, the big picture, right? The long game. So
Yeah. What about their breath weapons? Are you okay that these guys don't have breath weapons?
it's weird. They're pacifists and they're scholars. So I get why they don't have the more warrior based. They actually make mention of their savage brethren, right, and stuff. And so I could see how these guys are like retired warriors, almost as like a race. They're just, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wars for young people type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I like them. I would agree. They're not really dragons, and I'm also not a huge fan in the simplicity of 5e in bringing in a new system just for a handful of creatures. Right? The charges for their psionic abilities.
It's interesting. I'm going to hard disagree with you. Just because normally in previous editions we've had the book of psionic nonsense, where there's 4 different subclasses and anybody can pick up this item and do this. And we've got, if you are one of these races, you have psionic bullshit that you can have different charge. And there's so much more that gets added to everything. It's an extra layer that DMs have to think about. This is very much pushed over into the corner.
True, right? But this is opening up that door that I know for a fact players are going to want to run after and be like, how do I get charges?
Right. And that's why I say I would have a gem, and I would say, like, and it's on a wizard staff, and you get 4 charges that recharge at dawn, and the really low-powered psionic abilities you can choose which one, and it's just, like it's no different than any other magic weapon. That's like you can do this or this or this. Recharges at dawn.
They're just psionic abilities.
They're just the psionic manifestations.
Cool. And just because it's psionic doesn't mean it's psychic.
That's right.
Right? And that is an important distinction whenever we start talking about psionics that people have to understand.
Psionics is so psychic is reaching into people's heads. It's telepathy. It's telekinesis.
It's Xavier and Jean Grey.
Yeah, it's using your mind to affect the world around you. Psionics is tapping into not the weave necessarily, but reality itself and warping it with the power of your brain.
Yeah.
Right? You're not imposing your will so much as you're tapping into reality.
More Psylocke and...
You're not going to find a good parallel with the X-Men because there are no consistent rules with the X-Men.
I guess that's true, yeah.
It's like you're not manipulating the world, you're like rewriting the code sort of thing. So
It's a difference between Morpheus is psychic and Neo is psionic.
Right.
Okay, yeah, okay, I see it. Terry, what do you think of these guys?
Yeah, I don't mind them at all. I think the thing I want to put across is Matt Colville. I take from watching his videos is just such an intelligent guy, and I know this is very well thought through for him. And if he was to be here, first of all, we'd all be very excited. But second of all, I would like to see his train of thought and how he came around, what he thinks of psionics, and why he put them in. Because even though there's some things that I'm not too keen on, he would have great reasons for it, I think, and I'm sure he would sway me. The lack of breath weapon, the purist in me does not like that. Mm-hmm. It feels like the dragon, it's not to the level that the dragon has sold their soul, but it's like the thing that we associate most with dragons is not present anymore. And that's sad for me. That's disappointing. But because of the nature of how these gem dragons are constructed, like Adam said, it's take it or leave it, move it to the side if you don't want it. It's easy to slide it in if you do. So yeah, I'm glad that there's more options. I think they're very well thought out. I just like breath weapons.
You got a little British here. You got the
British.
breath weapons.
Oh, my breath weapons.
Yeah.
Oh, breath weapons. Yeah, well, what you going to do that for anyway? Matt Colville.
So... Same initiative. Give me one encounter. I don't care if it's a social or a combat or an exploration encounter. Give me one encounter with these guys. Adam?
Well, like in general, they're I went over 6. Let me say, I like the topaz dragons.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are kind of like the absent-minded professors that are hoarding magic items and stuff.
They're the ones that bring flubber into my campaign, and now I'm on board.
I think that these... By lore, they're the ones that you are going to find first. You're going to interact with them more often, and as a result, you are going to have to put up with some of their nonsense. But I'm not playing him for comedy, and I'm not playing him to annoy my players. I am playing him so that he is distracted. I can't come help you with this because I'm doing this shit over here. I don't care that reorganizing my scrolls doesn't seem as important as defeating the Lich. But like, I have a legitimate reason for this. Mm-hmm. This is why I'm over here. Every one of these guys has a reason to not engage directly with whatever the big bad guy is, and that is my problem with the metallic dragons. Why does the ancient brass dragon, say, "Hey, it's adventurers. I know they're going off to fight a death knight. Okay, bye." When he can just swoop over there and get that shit done in 20 minutes, right? Yeah. So, and that's always a problem in D&D is these ideas of quest givers and whatnot. So when it comes to the encounter that I would come up with, it would be anything quest giver. And you would come to this dragon over and over again, and every time his lair is radically different. And there would be different traps to get in as well. And you would have kind of advantage over time on getting past some of them and figuring it out, learning his methods. But this gives me just an awesome repository for magic items to be handed out. Like, these guys are just really good quest givers, the Topaz Dragons.
Yeah. For me, I'm enamored with the Ruby Dragons. On top, like, even with the Topaz Dragons, I love them. They're good comedy aspect, and I like a little bit of comedy in my campaign. But the Ruby Dragons, to me, are, like, the top-end prison guards. Like, these are the ones who have imprisoned the Lich. Like, we always hear these stories about, a Sararak is imprisoned in the bottom of the blank, and he's doing this thing with God and soul energy.
Yeah, who put him there?
Who put him there? A Ruby fucking dragon did, right? And then that Ruby dragon got destroyed or whatever happened. But actually meeting a ruby dragon at the top of a tower, sitting there, telling your party, no, you cannot go in this next room. And here are all the reasons why. If that guy gets one shred, it's like Magneto in his little plastic. I'm full of X-Men references today, apparently. But Magneto in his little like glass and plastic room. There's like a mad gnome illusion wizard who is stuck in a room, and
if you wake him up,
shit will go down, and I will straight up murder you guys. I don't want to, but I will if you attempt to go in that room. Right? That level of just authority on the subject is a great thing, right? And it's a great tool for any DM to pull on. Terry?
Love it. I love the Amethyst Dragons. That was the manipulators, right?
Yeah.
Because no one is surprised. They're the Slytherins of the...
Sure, but this feels like on another level to say, like the 5th edition Green Dragon type manipulation, where it feels for me like they would manipulate you over and over again in ways that you couldn't even understand it was happening until it had already happened, make you feel like you were contributing something important, all for their grand master plan, which you would not be able to even understand even if you tried. And the idea that even if you got frustrated, the comeback would be, do not pretend that you are even important enough for me to even slightly explain why I'm doing this. You're lucky I'm even speaking to you. This happened to you because I needed it to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's what I would want to go with, because I think that gives a huge sense of awe. As much more than if they were to stand there and monologue about, this is why I did this and I used you as this point, because then they feel more human in a way, much more closer to you. But when you just have no comprehension of why it even happened or why they did that to you, it makes them feel much more grand, I think.
Cool.
I'm totally on board with that. I agree.
Nearly 1 year ago, you witnessed how Louise Knox met a terrible fate as she attempted to flee from a sinister house. Nearly 11 months ago, you witnessed how Ox Dillon lost everything he ever loved and was arrested for the murder of his dearest friend. And then the prophesied horrors turned to silence, and all you could do was wait. But the 10th month has arrived again, and this keeper of arcane secrets returns to you once more with 5 new tales of 5 new tortured souls, each isolated from help and hope. There are myriad ways to lose yourself to the unimaginable, as I will unveil before the clock strikes midnight on All Hallows Eve. New terrors, new tragedies, and familiar faces begin to weave themselves into the apocalyptic tapestry of dread as this train begins once again to pick up steam while it barrels toward monolith, murder, flame, disaster, and darkness. Steel yourself and witness the dawning horror of how a federal agent is faced with a series of mysterious disappearances in a foreign land. How an outdoorsman watches his livelihood and sanctuary fall under attack by unknown forces. How a man of the cloth winds up facing a perversion of his own faith. How a fearless bootlegger faces down horror in the midst of a destructive storm. How a renowned archaeologist ends up in over his head in more ways than one. No matter the route, no matter the traveler, there is little hope to be found on the many roads to Amelia.
All right, so let's move back in time to the crazy stepchild of Dungeons & Dragons, the middle child of D&D, 4th edition. It did not get enough attention, really. I have warmed up to it in recent years, digging into more of the mechanics. Terry, you've got very little experience when it comes to 4th edition. So,
0.
yeah, after going through all the books and everything, we've got you set up with some 4th edition dragons. What you got for us?
Guys, I will try my hardest here, but this was the hardest episode I've ever had to prep for, 'cause just in trying to retain everything. Because you can only do bullet points with this. We read off notes for you guys at home, but it's like I can't write paragraphs and paragraphs. So I will try my best. If I get something wrong, hopefully you guys will be able to correct me, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so what I wanted to look into was the differences that I noticed as somebody who started at 5th edition, then looked into 4th edition as best I could, and the differences in lore that I noticed along the way. First of all, there are so many more dragons, types, and numbers of those types.
5th edition is lackluster in variety.
So imagine me. I put it in our chat yesterday. I was like, "Hey, where's the book so I can dive into this?" And then I got to it and I was like, "Oh shit, here we go." I'm glad I didn't do it like an hour and a half before.
Yeah, you sent
episode.
that message last night. I'm like, oh, Terry's got a late night.
Oh fuck! Like I tried, but I think what I was most taken by was that the lore went deeper than I thought dragon lore did. In that I learned all about Io. Io, and is that why General Io in Avatar is General Io, because of his links to like fire and dragons and all that? I just thought maybe there was a parallel drawn there.
I mean, there very well could be. There is a lot of like Asian lore
influence,
mythology that inspires that.
So so Io being the true god of dragons, the true creator of dragons, I guess, and from Io's death came Bahamut and Tiamat.
Yep.
But that was strange for me because, and they're siblings then. But I always took them as kind of like the father and the mother of dragonkind. I didn't really see their relationship as being like one of a sibling relationship.
You're right. She's the mother of dragons, just those ones, and he's the father of those dragons.
Right. That's right. But there's many more. There's many more. There's a few more types of dragons. Catastrophic dragons, scourge dragons, planar dragons.
Yeah.
You get all of those right. Yeah. So I'm trying to look into those as well, and they've all gone off and got their own kinds of things. But what I'm saying with this is that if you're somebody who really gets sucked into these things, the 4th edition dragon lore is going to be fantastic for you. No, I don't like to read constantly pages and pages and pages of lore. I like it to unwrap in the game. Yeah. You know, that's what I'm like, I'm learning on the fly, because I like to keep that sense of wonder, right? I don't want to know everything before I go in. So it was fantastic to see that and learn a little bit more about them. What I was really drawn to as well is that there's different levels of aging as well. So we see the twilight aging, and then ultimately what happens when they start to move into the stage of death, which is something that I'd never really considered with dragons.
Yeah. Dragons are, they've got one way to die, and it's at the tip of a sword.
Yeah.
Right? And that's typically, as a player, that's what we think.
The twilight...
Well, you didn't say tip of the bard.
That's a different, smaller death.
Yeah. Liberty more.
That's the twilight. Yeah.
Orgasms.
The little death.
Yeah.
The twilight stage I really enjoyed, because that's when a dragon starts to weaken. And what I like about it is there's no hard, fast rules on how that happens. There isn't even a constant between the dragon varieties. The DM is, of course, given inspiration through the books, but it's ultimately up to them how that's reflected. And I love that, because that got me thinking, what happens when something so powerful ultimately starts to decline? Adam and I have just talking about this with the book Flowers for Algernon that we've been talking about past couple of weeks. But it gave me that as well, because how many people have you pissed off over these years? How many generations of people have you frustrated? And that was filling me with inspiration for how to use this.
It's not even that. Think about all the things that you've built too. Like, I assume that when a dragon's influence and power wilts slowly over time, the banks that they have created slowly start to lose their wealth and their influence. If they have some sort of regional effects that control the weather, it starts to normalize and there are fewer storms, or whatever it is, their influence on the world just decreases. You kind of feel that with, like, in Lord of the Rings, as the elves are leaving, the elvish magic in the world becomes dimmer, right? And so, like, I feel like when a dragon starts to get weaker, we need more shit in 5th. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I am too. And I think what I would probably do is lean into one particular way that it's weakening, whether it's the senses are failing, it's becoming less viable in some certain degrees, it's harder for it to recharge its abilities. I would lean into one thing because when you're specific in that, the players in the campaign can work around that. If it's a little bit of everything, or you're just doing everything, there's no obvious path to take, and the players may not become excited that they've found something that they can exploit. So that's certainly exciting for me. I was reading that when dragons, Dan, you just mentioned it there, when they get to the stage of death and they are weakening, typically they'll just like to go out into a blaze of glory. They will just travel to another dragon's territory and just say, we're having it. This is my last stand. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
And I love that as well, because that's certainly something you can wind into a campaign, because that's like an earthquake going off. You don't know when it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, you see a lot of lore in 5e about dragons and giants really not getting along, to the fact where there's massive wars between dragons and giants. And that lore is from 3.5. It's from 4th.
Which is why it's such a big stinger. And they don't really touch on this in the books, that frost giants have white dragon pets.
Yeah.
And shit, like, that's a fucking slight.
Yeah. So, like, I just imagine a dragon just, like you said, at the end of its rope going up to, like, a coven of storm giants, whatever you call it, a gaggle of storm giants, and just being like, hey, and like just blowing fire on them and be like, come on, do it. I'm ready.
Oh, you know what? I like the idea of the evil ones would go up, because storm giants are the good ones, right? So like you could have a red dragon in the final throes just fly up above the clouds into the kingdom and wreak fucking havoc.
Yeah.
But it's not dragon sized; it's like pony sized, right? Compared to the giants. So like is big, or maybe bear sized. Mm-hmm. It's big,
but they're big too.
So it's like, hey, I'm gonna wipe out a couple city blocks. I'm not gonna be able to topple the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah, so even though a dragon is getting older and weakening, I love how that is still a threat. So the people in charge of the nearby city or whatever are saying, hey, we haven't seen the dragon for so many years or whatever. We know what this means.
Well, think of the power vacuum, right? A dragon, especially like an ancient red, leaves, and then all of a sudden his territory is just open and ripe for picking from
so many dead kobolds as they vie for control.
Oh yeah.
But that is going to be back-to-back catastrophes, because you're going to get the current dragon going out in a blaze of glory, and you have to deal with that. And remember, it's still a fucking dragon. It's an old dragon, but it's a dragon, right? But immediately after, there's going to be a rush to take that territory.
What's interesting too is that if you think about it from the good dragon perspective, I'm thinking about, okay, back to Lord of the Rings for a second, Minas Tirith, as the line of men fell, that white tree weakened and started to wilt and was almost dead.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine a silver or a gold dragon that has been ruling a kingdom, and there's been no crime. There's literally no crime. There's no famine, there's no disease, because good is pervasive. Everyone's working together, and now it's diminishing, and people start to scheme. People are starting to think.
It's the decay of a utopian society.
Yeah.
Oh, that is...
You went the other way, because I was thinking, what's going to happen when the chromatic dragon's dying? But you're right. What happens when the good aligned dragon is dying and things are starting to go the other way? And who's the guy coming in next?
Yeah, the copper dragon, the ancient copper dragon dies, and suddenly nothing's funny anymore.
Yeah, exactly. The dragon used to say that. Yeah. Another part of the 4th edition lore that I loved is everything seems so much more amplified, in that dragons, it's not that they don't, I suppose it is that they don't comprehend certain traditions, beliefs, taboos even that are humane, but it's not important to them at all. And I view it as a lot of our traditions, beliefs, and taboos come from our own religions from around the world, and in the short time that we've been on this earth, we've created what's important based off of that and made our own kind of rules for everything. But if you're a dragon that will have a much more in-depth understanding of the universe around us, those things are suddenly not important. And it's not necessarily the people, the regular people like us, are wrong. Like if we're going, no, Pelor is the true deity, they might be going, yeah, that's right. But he doesn't give a fuck about whether or not you go to work on a Saturday.
Also, specifically with Pelor, they could also be like, yeah, but I also remember when he was just a dude training in a yard before he gained godhood.
Right.
And he ain't shit, y'all.
Can you just picture the 3,000-year-old black dragons like Vecna, that bitch?
Yeah.
What an up jump little piece of shit.
Right.
Someone needs to knock him off his fucking platform.
But there's so many different things that we can do that would, whether it just be like a comical thing, like you guys are saying, like if you walk in and you're trying to show respect and everybody gets down on one knee for the dragon, he's going, get up, you jumped up nutcracker. What do you think that's what did that do? Congratulations, you dropped 2 feet. Like, oh, thank you.
You are wasting my time.
Yes, I get it. I'm important. Move on.
Yeah, but also important to the point that why would they even entertain you? Because I think lots of times in 5th edition, it's how are we going to have this conversation with the dragon? How are we going to convince the dragon? How are we going to do this? And it's beyond the point of dragons don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. It's more that the dragon doesn't know that the ant's nest is over there. That's the point where it's like, I don't care what they're doing. It's not important.
What are the general motivations? The general motivations of the chromatic dragons are tyranny or food or horde, right?
Or control, yeah.
Tyranny.
Yeah.
And then for the metallic dragons, it's horde again, right? And it's interaction with the world.
A lot of them are knowledge,
protection.
Yeah. A lot of the metallics just authentically enjoy humanity and like humanoid cultures and are fascinated by the shorter lived creatures and see themselves as the protectors of them.
Yeah.
Right?
They're almost like dryads with a garden, only the garden is people's.
Yeah, some of them for sure. I mean, maybe not so much a bronze dragon, but a gold. I don't even think a gold would foster people like that, but a silver, a copper, yeah. Brass for sure.
Well, a gold. Well, bronze are more warfaring, but they're going to choose a side, right? I want these plants to do better than those plants. I'm going to weed out that shit there,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. Sex. Dragons have sex.
Okay. You don't say.
That's it. That's all I've got. No, the lore was going into a lot more detail in this than we've seen in 5th edition. In that, dragons will typically. You shook your head at that.
No. The dragons went into detail. I'm like, yeah. Are they talking about like draconic?
Okay,
positions?
I should have said procreation and mating or something. I suppose.
Yeah.
In that we know anyway that dragon types will typically stick with their own kind. Blues will mate with blues, golds and golds, etc. But it is still possible, and it does still happen, that dragon mules will exist.
Yeah.
And so I was reading right into this. Yeah. I was like, so are they going to start to look like a swirly kind of color of whatever? And what I learned is that typically they will stick with the coloring of one parent. Usually it might be tainted a little bit. The blue might not be a brilliant blue that you're used to or whatever. Their features may adjust between the parents, but their abilities will be in line with one parent.
Oh, that's cool. So it could be like a green dragon who has a physicality in the horn of a blue dragon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or you can, when you start to mix them, like if you're going to do blue and red or whatever, that dragon might look a little bit more purple. The physicality might be different.
I would fuck with my party hard with this because like you get a green dragon that looks like a green dragon. It's living in a forest like a green dragon. It's got weird horns, kind of like a black dragon, but I mean, no, it's green dragon. Nope, this thing is straight up spitting acid on us. What the shit?
Exactly. But that's an adventure in itself, right? It's figuring that out. What about the red and the white dragon that mate and it comes out looking like you put red panties in your lunch every time somebody meets the dragon?
No,
fucking I get it. I'm the pink dragon. Laugh it up.
But no, you know that red and white give you the steam breath weapon that a dragon turtle has?
Yeah.
Right? Because of the ice and the fire.
Are dragon turtles just the offspring of a
turtle and a dragon? No, Dan, calm down. It's one horny tortoise bard, like a turtle bard. And
like a turtle and a dragon when the change shape. Yeah, but oh god, imagine the build-up going into a pink dragon. You don't know it's a pink dragon. You're expecting a red, and you go in, and it's so anticlimactic. What? What did you expect?
Yes, this is my bow. What does it matter to you?
I've seen Shrek, man. Pink dragons are not to be trifled with.
What is my draconic name? It's Princess Sparkle Pants.
Yeah. So what I found is when the lore went this deep, there's much more inspirations and direction really on exploration. I was saying to you guys earlier on that it feels like the dragons are such a huge part of the game. They're half the name, but often we don't know what they want long term. Yeah. We don't know what they're going after. We don't know what happens to them after a while.
Well, way back when, in early editions, there was a human kingdom, there were a handful of dungeons full of skeletons, and there was a dragon nearby. And the dragon was something that you had to investigate, you had to placate, you had to interact with, you had to rescue people from their clutches, or you had to go get a thing from their horde. And so there are all these different aspects of interacting with the dragon because you cannot freaking kill it. Because it is a dragon and you are level 6.
Yeah.
And the balance was so much different way back then, right? Like, things could just get so godlike powerful that you are never in your life going to have the opportunity to take it down without some sort of ritual spell or planar shifting or getting a god to come intervene on your behalf. There's no way that you, a mortal, are going to knock off a dragon scale. Much the same way that they dealt with that shit in The Hobbit, right? Like, yeah, Smaug is an issue. We've got 10,000 guys, but we can't pierce its fucking scales. So, doesn't matter how many dudes we have, we will lose. Like, you can do literally 0 damage to this thing every time you hit it. So, and that's how it used to be back in the day. So there was lore to explore in order to interact with the dragons.
Yeah.
And that's why we have Dungeons and Dragons. Human Kingdom, you go down to the dungeons or you go into the mountains and fight the dragon, right? And so here we are now. And it's shitty how 5th Ed has just dropped the fucking ball.
I agree.
Yeah. 5th has done great things in a lot of ways, but yeah, absolutely with that. And I think another thing as well I took from 4th edition is the importance of time with the dragon. It feels much more shortened in a way in 5th edition, but it's certainly much more exaggerated in the lore with 4th edition, is in that communication, negotiations, wars, whatever with dragons may take generations. You know, your grandfather may approach them about something, but they're in no rush. They're like elves. They have the long view of the world. They're not going to be rushing down the bottom of the mountain the next day to give you their answer. You know, 2 generations later, they might fly in and go, no, and then fly off again. You know, and likewise, it's kind of like North Korea in a way. It's like if you fuck up, your grandfather's paying for it as well, or you're, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
it's like it's generations down, and that, I think that's going to make for much more interesting campaigns and story arcs in that it's not so episodic and quick. These can be long, drawn-out things. An entire city can be punished for something that happened 100 years ago.
Yes.
And so, that's my lore. That's what I have on 4th edition. If there's anything I've missed, please throw it in.
No, that's solid. It is so much better than what we get for 5th, right?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So from this, when we have so many options and so many different things happening with these dragons, then we start to get inspirations, and we can use things such as elemental dragons, where the inspiration is drawn from the others, and there's much more opportunity to become more creative and put those in your campaigns. We know with 5th, it just seems very stuck. You know, you choose the dragon type and you go there. 4th edition, I know there's complaints about 4th edition, but just seemed much more open. There was much more opportunity to get deeper into things.
Cool. So let's grab our dice and roll here. And I want to know, what's your favorite part about 4th edition dragons? And one interesting encounter, like we mentioned before. I got an 18.
I got a 16.
I went last with a 9. I went first with a 5 earlier. I went last with a 9.
For me, with the 4th edition lore, I love the fact that all of the dragons, they have all these different types as well that we see with 4th edition, where they're brutes or whatnot. It helps telegraph what you could play the dragon as. But one of my favorite parts about them is how they've ramped up that elemental aspect into them in 4th edition. And having a dragon that is a master of not just his location and his lair and his region, but of his element.
Right.
Well, yeah, when you get volcanic dragons and earthquake dragons.
Yeah.
And shit,
You got a dragon at the center of a hurricane. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can really expand on the fact that, like, if you're having a elemental issue focused campaign, like the elements are going out of whack or whatever it is, you go to the dragon for answers, not start summoning genie and looking for genasi to solve the problem, right?
But when you have a more expansive lore like this, you have more options to get creative with, more places to draw inspiration from. The problem with 5th edition is it's so limited in what we have, is that if you are newer to the game, and I like being the voice of the new person because in a lot of ways I am, there's not enough to draw inspiration from. You don't know what you can do, what you should do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But with this, you can go crazy. You can completely ignore 95% of it because it's not related, but you can say this particular 5% of the elemental dragons or the twilight phase or whatever, you have more to draw from.
This is something that's come up in the podcast before, where Adam would be like, "Okay, Dan, you need to break down the lore for this thing, right?" Or it'll come up where we have to break down the lore, but there's always that note: keep it in 5e, because so often I want to fall back and like I'm starting to pull inspiration from 5e, from 4e, from 3.5.
And this is honestly the first time that I've understood that struggle.
Yeah.
Really, because lots of times the examples that you would have given it during the podcast would be like specific little things, right?
Yeah.
And we've said keep it 5th edition because that's the audience that we have right now. And me thinking, come on, Dan, just keep it bloody 5th edition. Read the Red Dragon. What's the but when you go into this, it's now understandable how tempting it would be.
Well, it's just tip of the iceberg. With the exception of personality,
Right.
layer and regional effects, and breath weapon, a dragon is a dragon is a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
How big is it and how many hit dice does it have? That's the difference between a red dragon and a gold dragon in 5th edition. It's nothing.
Yeah.
You dig into this shit. Because, look, I encourage people to go back and dig into 4th edition. If you go into the monster manual, it has only the chromatic dragons. And it doesn't have the ones you're familiar with. It has a different list of chromatic dragons. Red is still red, but the rest of them are a little different. Monster Manual 2 has metallic dragons. Again, you're still going to get gold and silver, but you don't get... I think you get iron dragons and shit.
Iron pop up there.
There's no brass dragon, I think, is not in it, or copper isn't in it either. So, like, there's got an adamantine for sure in there. The third one is all about this catastrophic or...
the planar dragons.
No, it's the catastrophic. It's the elemental ones.
Okay,
There's no
yeah.
planar dragons in there yet. So that one is specifically for volcanic dragons, earthquake dragons. There's one that's literally called a catastrophic dragon. And they are all about elemental and like natural disaster level dragons.
Right.
And then you got the two Draconomicons, one for chromatic and one for metallic. And then there were more books coming after that, which is where you start to get into your planar ones.
Yeah.
But the Draconomicons themselves were fully, like, they're full books. They are big, thick-ass books about, here's everything you need to know about chromatic dragons. Here's a list of 16 of them. And this is how each one is different, and this is how they act differently, and they all have different rules about them and slightly different mechanics to them and different breath weapons. This one has a stomp feature. This one has a wing attack. This one has will move double speed because it never grew wings, so it runs across the ground. It's got to be fast and everything else. They all have weird shit like that. So you can dive deep. We do not have time in this episode to
Yeah.
do that
No.
shit. So when it comes to these breakdowns, though, it's the Draconomicons that give us the best info with all of the lifespan stuff that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think until we get this expanded lore in 5th edition, I'm still going to draw from this when it comes to campaign building. I remember in one of the Dragon episodes, one of the like ideas that I had was...
Pick them up and drop them.
Was pick them up and drop them, which I said twice. Was
An episode.
Dan's like, you said it 7 times. I'm like,
That's
I
a
think I
great
said a
Dan
variant
impression.
of it.
That
maybe
sounds like
3,
Dan,
maybe
yeah.
3, and everything, all of the other genius that I provided was ignored. But hey, what I'm trying to say is, I gave an idea for an elemental type dragon that I thought dragons could expand into, not realizing.
I think it was a red dragon in a volcano.
Yeah, was to go into the heart of the volcano and come out stronger, not realizing it was actually already in 4th edition lore.
Cool, yeah.
And sorry, another thing I want to add real quick was this is the level of detail we get in 4th edition is the anatomy as well. It like break their organs, their muscle system, they're explaining how frightful presence is created inside the frontal lobe. You know,
4th edition was oddly
I was like, what?
it's oddly specific in some ways.
It's funny when you're looking through Strongholds and Followers, you get that weird, oddly specific shit from Matt Colville too.
Yeah.
Because it's like the creators. So here's what happened. There was as far as lore goes, it was a next progression edition to edition. Every time there was a new edition, it was the next era in the same story. 4th edition is like, nah, fuck that, we're doing our own thing. There's a Raven Queen over here. We never had that before, but hey, check that out. There's one over here. And dragons can do this shit now. And hey, you know what? Minions and it just totally rewrote it. So the creators were able to just go, well, why can't they do this?
Yeah.
And then they just started to get really weirdly specific about shit. And you can tell based on who wrote what books, like what level of detail that you're going to get is really fascinating to dig into.
It kind of feels like they then went to 5th edition and went, all right, we need to rein it
Let's
back
dumb it down.
and then justify that shit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like they spent more time justifying their craziness than actually building dragons that pack the same punch that we see in previous editions.
It's like that's when they hired all of the millennials. They got their bicycles and beanbags, and they were like, "We got to rewrite this entire."
Fired Dave Noonan and everything went to shit. I'm still
when
bitter
they were
about
like,
that.
Frightful presence. You have 3 paragraphs here about the frontal cortex lobe. Yep, I'm going to fix this for you. Dragons are scary. Frightful presence. Explain. There we go. Okay, so I want to give a quick DM tip here. This can be used with dragon campaigns, and my thinking did originally come from dragon campaigns, but can be expanded out to very different campaigns. What I find when people are campaign building and they're trying to find theme and stick to a particular story arc, they'll typically choose one thing. So let's just say dragons to keep it simple, because we're talking about dragons. And what will happen is, as their juices get creative and they're flying around all over the place, I don't know if you guys get this, but you'll find it hard to stay on track. And you'll kind of go off and off and off, and you're like, I want dragons. This is going to be about a red dragon, going to be red dragon. But I'd really like a beholder to be in the campaign. Okay, I got to find a way to bring it back in, and then all of a sudden, mind flayers are coming in, and you can't stay on track. What I like to do, and this is a good tip if you're a new DM, is instead of trying to stick with one theme, take 2 themes, even if they're very radically different, and try and weave them together. And it almost acts like when you put the guardrails on when you're bowling, and it'll bounce you back in. Because if you start to go off in one direction, lean into the other theme and then bounce back to the other one. So what I'm saying is, if you have crazy examples, for example, you could do like, if your 2 themes were, Dan, feminism and crypto, right? But if I just said crypto, I bet you wouldn't stick to it. But if I said you have to stay between these 2 lines, you'll stick to it. If I said Formula 1 and crystal meth, Did you already?
No, hold on. It's NASCAR. It's NASCAR.
Yeah, that's it. That's NASCAR. Is what
No,
you're
because
talking
they're
about,
too
yeah.
sardine. They're too similar. Formula 1's a gentleman's sport, right? Formula 1 is meth.
Since fucking when?
Okay, you don't know what you're talking about. It is quote unquote a gentleman's sport until you, pardon the pun, lift the hood up and look underneath, where it's just full of corruption and.
It absolutely is. Yeah. Or last example would be K-pop and the occult. You know?
Oh, I'm certain they're all a bunch of cultists, anyways.
And this idea was coming from me when I realized this is what I like to do with stories in D&D. It originally started when I was thinking about a dragon campaign. I was talking to you guys about how I'd like to do something like Horde of the Dragon Queen. Is that when people try and stick on one line, they'll go off and they'll lose themselves. But if you try and bounce between 2 themes, you'll typically stay in direction. Because that tangent is enough to get the taste of the other thing and then come back in, and you'll come up with incredibly brilliant stories. If you even like, just before I finish this off, if you think like the last example of what is it? Is it Inferno is the one about population control and the cat that's Dan Brown book? Inferno, population control.
I don't.
Yes, yeah.
But it's 2 themes, right? That's what Dan Brown does. He'll have 2 very radical themes, and you'll weave them in together. It's usually the Catholic Church and something else, but it keeps you in a direction because it stops you going off. So that's my DM tip. If you're struggling to stay on course with one theme, take 2 themes and sew them together, and it will keep you in the barriers.
Yeah, you're giving yourself guidelines by opening up a little bit.
And that's what's great about the dragons that you were talking about is we have not just this dragon is dying or this dragon is looking to get a new mate or whatever, but we also have how is the society or the region around or everything else also being affected.
Right.
So you can go off and fight the beholder in some underground lair and whatnot and still get the like thawing frost because the white dragon is dying. Right. All the way through this area. So pools of water and dripping icicles and cracking, shifting. You're still thematically on the same road that you were before, even though you're fighting a beholder. Man, I had to learn that lesson the hard way with you guys in the last campaign.
Right.
Because I wanted to do big god cosmic nonsense and also pirates. And
perfect example, yeah.
Yeah, it was hard for me to I did it great for the first 6 episodes of a undead pirate ship and raising the anti-god and all that from cultists that had marooned the ship years ago. Great. Now what? Pirates for a couple of, until we get to the next place to deal with the next god. So you're gonna have pirates to deal with.
That's a perfect example, because if you just lent into the god theme, your brain's going to go all over the place. It's like there's
Or
two things.
you burn out. You get real limited, and your players won't follow what you want them to.
They don't understand, right?
Yeah.
They don't understand. But if you have two themes where you bounce off of, you have permission to go off the track a little bit because you're just bouncing to the other one, and then you're coming back again. And I think it gives more direction.
So if you have any ideas like weird dichotomies, reach out and let us know because we're always interested in hearing about them. You can get a hold of us, of course, at Instagram, Facebook, and r/itsAmimic on Reddit. You can also send us an email at info@itsamimic, or you can just give us a mailbag question if you don't have this cool dichotomy that you play with as well. If you have any questions about dragons, though, we're going to hold back on the mailbag until this next book comes out because we're going to get so many more answers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So we've talked about the Gem Dragons in 5th that Matt Colville gave us. We've talked about 4th edition. And finally, on the It's a Mimic podcast, I get to go in depth about some 3.5 shit.
Grab a pillow.
You son of a bitch.
I was trying to get it in before you fucking get on mute. All right.
Okay. So, buckle up. Before we get started, I just want to list off the names of the dragons we have in 3.5. Okay? We have red, green, blue, white, black, orange, purple, yellow, brown, gray, copper, bronze, silver, brass, gold, steel, amber, amethyst, crystal, emerald, sapphire, topaz, and obsidian dragons. We have adamantite, arboreal, astral, axial, battle, beast, chaos, chol, concordant, Elysian, ethereal, gloom, howling, oceanic, pyroclastic, radiant, and rust dragons.
Australian dragon.
We have chromium, cobalt, iron, and nickel dragons. We have aquatic brain stealer. Those are two separate things. Dishata, Phzalmus, mouse. Ectoplasmic, force. Hex, incarnum, mercury, mist, prismatic, rattleear, sand, shadow, song, and spineworm dragons. If you were listening, that was 59 different types of what 3.5 edition called true dragons.
Oh, yeah. It has 10,000 drakes.
Yeah. And this is beyond any wyverns, drakes,
Hydras, like all that other
any
shit.
of the other dragonkin. Those are just your dragons. Okay?
It blows my mind how much detail, depth, and learning we are willing to do for things that are not real. It blows me. Like, I'm on board. I'm all over it.
It gets even worse because we're talking about 3.5. We're talking about the edition that had a rule for everything. So, you got to think, all of those dragons, each one was vastly different from the next. Now, dragons in this edition, rather than having the 3 to 4 options per type of dragon we get in 5th, had 12 different stat blocks per type based on age. Okay?
What were the ages?
You had wormling, very young, young, juvenile, young adult, adult, mature adult, old, very old, ancient, worm, and great worm dragons. And each of those is roughly, they go from like 0 to 5 years old as a wormling to 1,201 or more for a great worm red dragon.
1,200 seems light.
1,200 seems light. But you also consider in 3.5, elves lived for 550 years. Like they actually put an end date on elf life.
Well, they're doing 5th ed too.
Yeah. So here's where it gets even more convoluted. There is also a separate breakdown entirely for a dragon's physical attacks based on the size of the dragons. Because giving each one of these types of dragons an individual stat block would just take up books. And it did. But the way they got around that was just adding a line for the size. Every single dragon that is, say, a medium dragon gets this line of physical attacks. Every dragon that is a colossal size gets this range of attacks. And yes, that's right. There were more sizes in 3.5 as well. 3.5 went from diminutive to colossal, where diminutive was one step below tiny and colossal was one step above gargantuan.
So the way that breaks down, just real quick, just for a reference point, is tiny is everything from an insect to a cat right now, but diminutive then was anything but the size of a frog and smaller.
Yeah.
Right.
What, dragons were that small?
There were some dragons went tiny and up. That was the one thing. They never hit diminutive. Even fairy
But
dragons.
not all dragons. You're talking about like like fairy dragons and stuff.
No, there were some dragons that got tiny.
No, but a
as
wormling
wormling
is not that small. Really?
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because the idea is that you could run into them when they were diminutive, because we saw a whole lot more size kerfuckery in spells.
We also got a lot more information about dragon eggs in 3.5.
Love that.
You mean any information?
Yeah,
Just
specifically
information.
like where they like to lay their eggs. The fact that a young adult, and this is hilarious, a young adult dragon will lay its eggs with far less care than a great worm red dragon that will still lay eggs. It'll just choose its moments and its places very specifically.
That's the same with humans, though.
It very, very much.
Yeah, if Teen Mom 2 taught me anything on MTV.
So these physical attacks would range from a bite and 2 claws to a bite, 2 claws, 2 wings, 1 tail slap, a crush, and a tail sweep every single round. And that's just their physical attacks. Now, it also made those attacks more complicated. If the creature was huge or larger, its bite or claws could snatch you like the feat snatch.
It's a hell of a snatch.
And I'm not talking about a good Guy Ritchie movie. What I'm talking about is if it hits, it grabs you, and if you're 3 size categories or smaller, each turn it automatically does damage against you equal to the damage to that claw or bite attack. Now, if you are bit, if it bites you and snatches you, you are denied your dex save straight up versus its breath weapon.
Which makes perfect sense.
Which makes perfect sense.
It's going to blow fire or whatever it is. And
Right.
it catches you in its mouth, holds you between its teeth, and then breath weapons you.
And grinds.
I am all over that rule. I think that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes
Right.
perfect sense. How can you argue against that?
Oh, yeah, right? But think,
Incidentally, I'm going to name a dragon Good Guy Ritchie. I'm like, why is he a good guy? He just is. Good Guy Ritchie.
but the thing that really gets me is like the bite attack for a colossal sized dragon, which could be anything from an ancient to a great worm dragon, really, is 48 damage. So every turn you're getting 48 just ground down on you automatically. Doesn't have to roll against it. But then it still gets 2 claws that are 46 each, 2 wings that are 2d8 each, a tail slap, which is 46, a crush attack, which only affects creatures 3 size categories or smaller than it, for 48 damage, and a tail sweep for 2d8 damage. And all of this gets to add the dragon's strength score in some way, shape, or form.
Were you ever a DM for 3.5?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was... You had to fucking prep. You think prepping for 5th edition is difficult?
Not anymore.
man.
Oh, Jesus.
There's a reason I'm
this
at
is
late...
just your turn. This is not all the shit you have to remember for the other 5 people.
This is why I'm a lazy DM now, is because I had to deal with this shit when I
Jaded.
was 17 years old.
Yeah,
Right.
whereas I'm very much a super prepper because, I mean, I've only prepped for 6 hours this week.
Yeah.
I feel like I've only done half the job I need.
You've
feel
done
like
one
you've gone
encounter.
through-
Congratulations.
You DM for 3.5 as well?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Now, here's the other thing. You mentioned in 4th edition how their breath weapons would recharge on a dice and it would show you like a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6 on the dice, right? 5th edition, they recharge typically on a 5 or 6 on a d6. Not so in 3.5. 3.5 recharged every 1d4 rounds.
Okay.
So it uses breath weapon, you roll, and you know in 1 round it gets it back.
Is it an open roll? Or
Oh no, you as a DM do it silently. It attacks you, and now your players are just like, we either have 4 rounds or we're screwed next round. Because the breath weapons were also far more deadly in 3.5 than they are in 5th edition.
If you can get a breath weapon off twice in an encounter,
You've
you
killed
have
a player.
You have a total party kill.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons for that is the sizes. They go from anything from a 30-foot line or 15-foot cone to a 140-foot line or 70-foot cone. So a cone that goes out 70 feet on either direction, right? Now, what else do the majority of dragons get on top of all of these attacks? Well, if they're 51 years or older, so young adults or greater, yes, they are young adults at 51 years old, they get Fearful Presence. This is an extraordinary ability that is an aura that is always active. Any creature within 30 feet multiplied by the age category that they are. So a mature adult would be a 7 or a great worm would be a 12. That also has fewer hit dice than the dragon, must succeed on a will save, which is basically your wisdom save, or be panicked, i.e. run the fuck away, and a -2 on all save skills and ability checks for 4d6 rounds. You do not get to reroll this, by the way. Now, if you're level 5 or above, as in you have 5 hit dice or above, you are merely shaken for 4d6 rounds, which is -2 to skills, attacks, saves, and ability checks. And the one thing I wanted to put as an aside note is shaken reduces your your attacks. Panicked does not.
But panic means you have to run away.
And if you are cornered, you have to take what is called the total defense action, where you spend your entire turn cowering.
Right.
Right?
It's not the time to talk about it, but we need a middle ground between 3.5 and 5e. I'm seeing
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
There's more to it. There's more to explore.
Yes,
right?
there's. Yes.
Come on, 6th.
This is why Dan and I are like, you want to do a podcast? I'm like, 5th edition only, Dan. Okay.
Oh, it's about to get worse. So, all dragons are also spellcasters, and most of them cast as a sorcerer. Some dragons cast with access to cleric lists and cleric domains as well.
Right.
Okay? Which domains functioned in 3.5 a lot like they function in 5th, except you got 2 of them, not 1.
So you'd be light and life, for example.
Yeah. So dragons that are also that young adults are higher. So if they have the frightful presence, also get damage reduction, although it scales with size and age, as well as immunity to sleep and paralysis on top of type-related immunities.
Remember, damage resistance, by the way, is I'm just going to shake off the first 3 points of damage that you give to me.
Right, okay.
For example, a great worm black dragon. A worm
It's
black
not resistance.
Dragon.
This is damage reduction.
This is damage reduction. This is just straight up a flat number you take off the damage.
Okay.
A worm black dragon gets DR 20 magic. So 20 damage taken off of their any attack against them, unless that damage comes from a magical source.
So if I sit there and I'm like, hey, you know what? I do 18 points of damage.
It goes, no.
It just shrugs it off.
He goes, was that sword magical? And you go, well, no, because it melted my other one. And you go, okay, but then no, it ignores it.
Man.
Okay. They also have spell resistance dependent on their type, which is the same general idea, right? Just for magic. They have blind sense within 60 feet, keen senses, as well as dark vision up to 120 feet. Okay? As for their society, it's fairly similar to 5th, so go listen to our past episodes. However, the majority of dragons choosing the solo life over one in contact and peace with other dragons. That's the way they choose their life. That said, a great threat can bring a few together, however, never over the metallic chromatic divide. Doesn't matter if it's a world-ending thing, metallics and chromatics will never get along in 3.5. Okay? Also noted by most dragons are the smell they naturally give away. All dragons have a distinct odor that aligns with the breath and type of dragon that they are. Greens smell of chlorine, whereas brass smell of metal and sand, right? It's this really, really cool level of thing.
I like that.
Okay? Let's get into some specific dragons here.
I'm exhausted.
It's about to get worse. So, just to cover one of the 10 types of chromatic dragon, your reds are the most covetous of all dragons, of course, and they tend to smell sulfurous, and love to eat specifically elven youth. It calls it out specifically.
There's a weird serial killer type kink to that.
They are impulsive and powerful, not one to monologue or appraise during a fight before jumping in and engaging with specifically its breath weapon.
So breathe first, ask questions later.
Breathe first, breathe again, ask more questions to their husks. Yeah. Greens, on the other hand, love forests and smell of chlorine, like I said. So bad, in fact, that the smell can often give these ambush specialists away. They use the woods in their favor, having the ability to command and grow the foliage around them at will.
We get that with some of their lair and regional shit.
Blue dragons love to burrow under their foes, sometimes just the tip of its horn sticking from the desert sands, like the sand shark.
Are we touching that? No? All right.
They are also huge into the hallucinatory aspects of deserts, having the ability to imitate sounds and cast large area illusions at will. Okay? This is above and beyond all of their spellcasting that they get and other abilities. Okay. Let's go through some of these more unique ones. Orange dragons. Orange dragons are river-based hunters that resemble alligators with webbed feet, long thin claws and fangs, and they like to walk close to the ground, like an alligator.
Right.
They are incredibly territorial and will attack creatures for sport, if nothing else. They're also sadistic, bathing foes in their breath weapon, then hiding to see how it affected them. Their breath attack is a gooey, sticky napalm-like acid that explodes after a couple turns on contact with air or water. So they'll hit you with it and nothing will happen for a couple turns.
Gambit spunk.
Kinda. It also is only removable with a universal solvent. So like it hits you and then it just sits there and waits 2 rounds and sees what happens to you.
What? That's in the rules. It's only removable with the universal
It
solvent.
actually says it's only removable with universal solvent.
And what does that mean in D&D terms?
Universal solvent is an item that is basically it's the only thing that could counter this and
Oh,
solve
not
that
like
glue.
Home Depot. Like
No,
universal
no, no,
solvent.
No, it's specifically a thing that breaks down glue.
Okay.
Right? Now, purple dragons, or deep dragons, live in the Underdark and have no layers, rather keen on exploring and finding areas unseen for eons. It is not particularly violent should you have information leading to such a location, and could even convince to aid a party, regardless of alignment, with the proper motivation. Their breath weapon is energy-based and can take the form of a burst, a cone, or a blade, depending on how old the dragon is.
But we don't do blades in 5th, right?
No.
No, we do not do blades in 5th.
So what's a blade? Just real quick, 10 seconds.
So basically what it is it's like a line that they can control.
Okay.
Yeah. Yellow dragons are more desert dragons, but they have ambush tactics. One of the things that I really like is they destroy water, kick up winds, and silence large areas before their attacks. They also dig themselves into depressions in the sands, and if somebody were to walk into the depression, would flap its wings to cave in the sides of the sand to bury their foe. And then they would just slither up to them and eat them in the sand. Okay? Brown dragons are one of the only wingless dragons that we get, but are like the blue and the yellow where they use their burrowing speed. And they also live in the desert. However, they primarily live under the sands. Yellows will go up and bask in sun. The browns just stay in the dirt. And they actually smell like fresh turned dirt. And that,
nice.
right? Yeah. Finally, one of the unique ones for 3.5 is called a gray dragon, later called a fang dragon. And this is really cool because they're poor flyers. These dragons would run along the ground. Their eyes would be bright red and their entire bodies are covered in horns and spikes. They're particularly moody, prone to sudden outbursts of violence. And they used to not have a breath weapon. And this is when they were called fang dragons because they didn't have a breath weapon. So they would just bite you. Right? However, Tiamat didn't like that and granted them a breath attack, which is an acidic attack, and increased the amount of danger their spiked and barbed bodies would cause, causing them to take a new name upon themselves, and that is when they became gray dragons.
Okay. Sometimes the lore seems unnecessary. Like, we could have skipped that chapter and just given them the breath.
Well,
weapon.
what happened was there were 2 magazines every month with a bunch of information and a new book every 6 weeks.
Really? Oh, shit, man.
Yeah.
Quick turnaround, eh?
Oh, it was insane. It was to the point that, I don't know if it wasn't always 6 weeks, but that like sometimes it was 6 weeks.
Yeah, like fast.
And so it was, there was just a lot of lore like, hey, you know what? We really like this, but we're going to have a adventure module that changes the way that the world works. So once you've played this, everything becomes like this now.
Yeah.
So the 3.5 actually fluctuated a little bit.
It grew and it shifted and it changed, but it was around for
So it was dependent on a
15
module,
years?
right? You're expected to play it and then everything's...
Well, the module would come out, and then everything after that had a fang dragon would just say it's a gray dragon.
Right.
If you only have this monster manual, like Monster Manual 4 or whatever it's right, and that has fang dragons, then add this to it as well.
And this was with a heavy asterisk because there was so much content coming out in such a rapid fire method, because that's just the magazines. That's not including affiliates, internet blog posts, or other books or other adventure paths that were coming out, right?
And they let people just publish under D&D titles too. Like there's some publications out there, like the Book of Erotic Fantasy, right? Which
No, come on.
Yeah.
literally a thing. Yeah, I have a PDF. I'll flip it to you, Terry. It's fucking cringeworthy.
Can you say
It's gross.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Don't put it on my my Google Drive or anything because I don't know how that thing works, and it's gonna end up in like my fucking work drive.
No, it's not even that it's gross. It's just like you can tell that the three horny nerds in their basement went, ha, and boobs, and like there's just a lot of that.
Real ones?
Yeah. Okay, speaking of nerds, let's get on to some of the metallic dragons. Coppers are very much the same as well. However, they are the masters of earth and earth magic. They like to spider climb, cast stone shape, transmute rock to mud, wall of stone, and move earth around, right? They're also, one of the interesting things I noticed about them is it notes that they love to eat specifically large poisonous creatures, and they attribute this to it increasing and sharpening their wit. They eat poison things to get more witty. Okay. Bronze can speak to animals innately and like to shapeshift into small and harmless animals to follow adventurers around. They will then use their abilities to aid adventurers in their adventures without the adventurers knowing who their benefactor is.
Right.
So they will like leave food or water if they're hungry, or like direct them in one way to guide them towards their treasure, all while like looking like a badger or Mr. Tumnus, right? Silver dragons are the most regal of them all. They were cheerful, helpful, and often appear as kindly old men or fair damsels when associating with humans. They smelled faintly of one of my favorite smells. Recently fell like fallen rain on a hot day. You know, that smell that kind of
it
gives
comes off the concrete?
Yeah.
I feel like
that's what a silver dragon
quick
smells
rain
like.
shower, yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
And it makes special note that they often spend so long with humanity that they will live entire lifelines with a human. And when it comes time for their persona to die, they will just turn into a silver dragon and fly away. They will live entire lifelines as a human without ever being a dragon.
Man,
Yeah.
this game.
But they could also walk on clouds, control the skies, and reverse gravity as well.
Yeah, no, ain't nobody walking on clouds.
Okay.
Walking in clouds.
No, literally walking on
How
clouds.
do you walk
Yeah.
on a cloud?
Be a silver dragon. Now, brass dragons, they like to bask in the lights and don't eat a lot, able to subsist of the light dew on a leaf in the morning, and can often be seen with their long snake-like tongues just pulling the dew off a leaf.
What?
And that is all they need to eat. However, like in 5e, they prefer to talk rather than fight, and should they be drawn into combat, they could twist the elements to their will with control minds, control weather, or summon a genie. They also have speak with animal stock, which I just thought was cool. Finally, gold dragons are master shapeshifters and paragons of good, fighting injustice and foul play. We know all this. However, they are one of the few dragons that has a friendly agreement with giants and will eat primarily gems. Okay? They're also known to be wise seers of all things, having the abilities to cast Bless, Sunburst, Foresight, Geish, and Quest, or detect gems and grant luck bonuses to their allies.
Right.
Okay? They have a boon system worked right into their stat block. Now, there are two other types of metallic dragons that 3.5 brought in. There are iron dragons, which are of the subtype ferrous, which is more of the common metals. They are lawful by nature and incredibly so. They are more interested in diplomacy or intimidation to avoid combat and would rather seek to subdue or incapacitate their foes over killing them. They also have metal sense, being able to sniff out sources of non-precious metals within 30 to 360 feet of them.
Do you understand that you don't need other monsters?
Right.
Like, we've gone through 12 of 59, Dan.
Yeah, and we don't have the time to go through all of them. I'm just pulling out some of the ones that I found most interesting, or that will play more effect into the dragons we have in 5e.
Sure.
Okay? So, steel dragons are...
You know we actually have steel dragons in 5th Ed?
We do?
Yeah, there's one steel dragon masked as an NPC in one of the adventures.
Is he in Waterdeep?
I am not going to confirm or deny for the people listening, because it is a fucking spoiler.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oops.
So...
Well, the reason why I asked that is because steel dragons are called Waterdeep dragons.
I got an issue with that, though, because steel's an alloy.
Yeah.
Well, so's bronze.
So's bronze, so's
yeah,
brass.
that's, yeah,
right?
actually, yeah.
Okay, but no, there is
Yeah.
one. But you just use, I think it's the silver. You use a silver stat block, but it's an evil.
Wow. Okay. So 3.5 takes a hard turn. Steel dragons aren't evil. They're
metallic.
They're very much a good dragon, and they're history and art obsessed dragons that would live in heavily populated humanoid towns like Waterdeep to pursue the love of art and business. However, they dislike absolute authority, regardless of its beneficence, right? And they will often foment revolution just to take down a king or another dragon or an emperor who they felt were overreaching. Tactically, they're charmers and tricksters, having the ability to enchant their foes, breathe acid and breathe acid and poison or teleport should the battle turn against them.
So these guys are just anti-authority figure. That's it.
Pretty much, but they
Don't
love
like the government.
Yes, but they love art and history. So these are your hipster dragons.
They're good. They're chaotic good.
Yeah.
Do they brew their own beer as well?
Probably.
Yeah.
Now, we had a bunch of other gem dragons in 3.5 as well, with Amber being a more woodland type of dragon. They're very druidic flavored and will magnetize creatures to hinder them. So if you have a lot of heavy metal armor, they'll magnetize you and fuck off. Amber dragons will do that. Amethyst dragons were wise and aloof. This is a separation from what we get in 5th. But they prefer to talk and would only fight if it was a straight up honorable fight. They hate fighting with trickery.
Yeah, Matt Colvilles are very different.
Yeah. They're magically gifted with the power of psionics and planar level spells. Their breath weapons are force energy, although they could lob it in crystal form like a grenade to erupt within enemy ranks.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they like coalesce their energy with their breath weapon and just go bloop, and like then it explodes and causes a bunch of fucking damage and chaos. Okay. Crystal dragons are translucent and breathe like shards of light, and a lot of their things are light based. Emerald dragons are knowledgeable but paranoid and distrustful, and their layers are covered in traps to hinder invaders. However, they still want to live close to areas for knowledge. Sapphire dragons love war, strategy, and conflict. They eat spiders and would rather incapacitate enemies with high-pitched sonic breath attacks. They were also brilliant psionicists, using telekinesis, telepathy, and teleporting to their advantage on a battlefield. There are also topaz dragons, which will dehydrate you, they have
like a blight type effect?
They have a cone. Their breath attack will pull the water out of you and shrivel you up.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you take con damage or something for that.
Yeah. They're also erratic and selfish to a fault, and like most metallic dragons, use the weather controlling abilities to their advantage. Finally, there are obsidian dragons, which are incredibly powerful psionics and the only evil gem dragon, and they breathe a cone of fire while assaulting the minds of their enemies. They're also able to teleport between planes at will.
Now, you said the iron one was one of the Ferris.
Yes.
What are the other Ferris ones?
The other Ferris dragons, are the chromium, cobalt, and nickel dragons.
I mean, sure. Why the fuck not?
Yeah, right.
We're just going to start listing fucking metals.
Random metals.
And as many as we can remember.
They got to a point where they're just like, what are we going to call this guy? I know, a brain stealer dragon.
It's too far, right?
Oh, well, how about this? The brain stealer dragon, since I mentioned it, is what would happen if a dragon and a mind flayer had a baby. These dragons live underground, have tentacles hanging off their lower mandible in lieu of horns, and they have a mind blast attack, can extract a brain after 5 rounds of being grabbed by a tentacle, and also have psionics, including telepathic communication up to 100 feet. These are a mind flayer dragon.
Well, we get a mind flip. The mind witness is a mind flayer beholder, right? So I don't hate that, but weird.
Yeah. We also have, I'm just going to pull out one more unique one here, ectoplasmic dragons. They are a scaleless, smooth-skinned, white, fire-based dragon. They come from the demi-plane of ectoplasm, whatever the fuck that is, and are bizarre and otherworldly because of it.
So just to give a little bit of context for people that aren't super fucking nerds, Ectoplasm is that white goo that ghosts leave behind when Slimer hits Peter Venkman, hits Bill
Right.
Murray, and slimes them. That's ectoplasm. So anytime that you have a ghost or supernatural, like undead being leave behind a residue, that's ectoplasm, which means that this is tied to the concept of undead.
It leans me more to ethereal plane is what I'm thinking. Stranger Things type vibes with this.
Kinda. This dragon's weird because you'd think it would have a lot of big undead notes, but it's mostly about fire, which is weird.
Right.
It doesn't have a lot of those undead notes, other than the fact that it has ectoplasm.
It's not an ectoplasm, it's ectoplasmic.
Yeah.
So the root word there is plasma. So that's why we're getting all this
Yeah,
fire things.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And ecto meaning it's from another world. So
Yeah.
wow, I
Thanks,
I fucking hate that I have to have a fucking interest in etymology to be able to figure that. You know what?
3.5 is another level of nerdy.
Well,
Oh, you
there-
don't, dude. fucking
I'm
tip-
not qualified
I am
to
barely
tip of the
scratching
iceberg.
the surface.
Tip of the
I'm not
fucking
qualified for this.
So these guys are basically evolution incarnate, and their abilities lead them to shift their form for any situation. However, they have a white fire breath. That is one word, white fire. It is a gob of exploding ectoplasm. They
Not even
also
touching that.
they also have a white fire aura
So
that
she said.
if it becomes hit with a melee attack, the attacker gets some of this white fire ectoplasm on them, which explodes with what I would assume is comedic effect.
Everything in your campaigns are comedic effect.
Not everything.
Jesus.
This is like a 10-year-old found a porno mag and then was later on DMing and still was like stuck on it. Or something.
Also known as 90% of DMs in the 90s.
I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, what do you feel about the 3.5 dragons, this weird, convoluted, multi-tiered system of age and how that affects them? What do you guys think of 3.5?
15.
1.
4.
Hey, look, I love it, right? I love variety. I love choices. I rarely have favorites. That's why when you ask me, all of you guys ask me, what's your favorite, this, favorite, that, I never have a favorite. I like variety. I like something new every time. 3.5 definitely provides that, but God, it's too much. It's analysis paralysis. It's the old thing. Like, you guys know I work in marketing. It's like if you provide too many options, people won't buy anything.
Yeah.
If you provide 4 options, they'll definitely buy something. It's that. It's we need a middle ground. I love it for the variety, the options, the background, the lore. It's just a little bit too much, you know. And you guys are saying scratching the surface. So,
For me, I completely agree with you. I love 3.5, but man, going back into this book, I was like, oh, the amount of research we had to do. This snatch mechanic, you find it in this like little paragraph off to the side in a wall of just dense text, right? It doesn't explain it anywhere else. It's just there. You have to this is a book for like nerds, written for nerds.
But the problem is it's not just one book.
No.
It's what books can you afford? What books do your players have access to?
Right.
Right. And then you got to try to figure out what does our campaign look like based on the fact that we have roughly 12% of the published material.
and this was before dropping a PDF on a Google Drive, which I've heard some people do.
I vividly remember me and my friends were very poor and could not afford the books. So my buddy loaded up all the books onto floppy disks, took them to the school printer and printed them out. And we had big binders full of the PHB, the DMG, 4 monster manuals, the Fiend Folio.
On the school's dime.
All on the school's dime.
Was it those old printers? That
Oh, yeah. They took
The
forever.
school secretary's
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So, all right, I have 3 thoughts about this. 1, I have no problem with any given detail or any given dragon breakdown. But clearly, we suffer from bloat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's too much here. So if you do a deep dive into, hey, I want a new kind of dragon, I'm just randomly going to pick, I'm going to look at your fucking list here, Dan.
Well-
I'm randomly going to pick a gloom dragon. That sounds cool. I'm going to throw that in my campaign. Great. If you have access to those books, that is a cool way of throwing your players for a loop. I like that. However, if you are sitting there going, I need a dragon that does some sort of kind of sticky adhesive environment, which dragon is that? You will find it, but it will take you 9 years to find it.
Yeah.
And so there's not enough time. But when we used to play 3.5, I'm not joking when I say our sessions were 25 minutes of playing a combat and 4.5 hours of standing outside smoking, going, do you think that maybe if I do this in my next round of combat, then this would have happened? And everyone else is sitting there pulling their books, right, while we're smoking cigarettes, going, hold on. Somewhere in the DMG2, there's some rule about jumping off of banisters. Hold on, I can find that. Give me a sec. So we're all sitting there trying to figure out, that's the other great thing about 5th edition. There are general rule sets, but any specific rule supersedes the general.
Right.
So if there's a specific rule, it overwrites the general rule. No such mechanic, no such system was in place in 3.5. So it was just, no, it says here, but over there. And remember, there was no advantage, disadvantage. It was all plus or minus
A numerical value.
a numerical value. Usually 1, 2, 5, 7 or 8, and 10. Right? So, and like, it was nuts, the fact you'd have to do this math. So, Terry, you're jumping off a banister. You've got a +4 to jump, but you have a -2 because you've got a twisted ankle. But the banister, you've got a special feat that lets you get a +3 on that. But the creature has a +4 against attacks from above. And your rapier has a +1, but it got damaged by an ooze, which is a -2.
I feel like I'm in 21 with Kevin Spacey, where the cards keep coming. I've got to go up 1, down 1, like every.
But it gets worse because then you look at the stats and there's no advantage or disadvantage, but there's also no bounded accuracy. So things like a Great Worm Copper Dragon, which is often regarded as one of the weakest dragons, has a 37 strength. Okay. It has a base of attack of +38 to your D20 roll.
So, like, why do you even bother to roll? Right? And this is why you don't even attempt this shit until when you reach whatever level. Back then, the CR rating, it wasn't even CR, it was a CL.
No, it was CR. It was CL in 3rd, and then they changed it to CR.
This makes me come to a realization on a couple of things, okay? So first of all, lots of times the complaint that I have is when people that have played older editions, I'm now realizing this is the crowd that does this, is when you'll say things like, it's this type of dragon, so it sees you. So it definitely does this. So it definitely does.
Yeah.
As though there's no role involved. But me as a 5th edition player, solely, I'm going, no, there is a 5% chance I could do this. You owe it to the players to let me try.
Yep.
But you guys are coming from this where you're like, what's the fucking... It literally never happened in the 10 years you were playing this, you know?
Yeah.
There
are not enough modifiers in the fucking game to be able to make you hide from this.
Do you miss this many options and this much variety? Because now I know we're expanding the books now in 5th edition, but up until say 3 years ago when we started playing together, it was like core books and a couple of extra modules. Is it less enjoyable for you having previously had so many more options of essentially the same thing?
It's a double-edged sword, man. Like, on one hand, yes, I would love to have more options for interesting character builds and to have unique and more options as a DM to make my monsters do in combat. But on the other hand, no, I don't want to do all this reading. I don't want to play this. I don't want to have this level of bloat affect my game again. I don't want to have want to have to worry about why Russell's rogue has a +47 to sneak but not hide, because those are different skills, and why their knowledge arcana is a +72,
right?
And they're level 6. What 3 feats did you take that gave you that? Oh, they exist. Okay, right. And the amount of bloat that was in there was just annoying.
Look, if I can be honest, I miss the variety, but I don't miss the rules. Give me the tools to build it myself so I can build different things over and over again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I really enjoy 5th Ed's kind of general, hey, all red dragons are like this. By the way, we've got a special one over here that has a name, and it's also spellcaster. And this one over here has a name, and this one has an increased movement speed. This one over here. And so they kind of imply that you can change it as you see fit.
Yeah.
And they give you rules in the DMG about how to build and change and twist these ideals around. I'm a big fan of that. I want you to imagine the fact that every time we sit down, every week we sit down to record a podcast, we do one of 6 topics, right? We do classes, races, lore, DM tips, monsters, or dragons. That's 6, which means by the time that we get down to the next round, the next time we cover dragons, there is a new book out.
Right.
The next time we hit the next lore episode, there is a new book out. And there may be a new book for Forgotten Realms and a new book for Eberron and a new monster manual.
And it also might make what he talked about 6 weeks ago redundant now.
Yeah, and not just redundant, but obsolete.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm at the point now in 5th edition, if someone came to me and said, let's start a podcast now, I'd say no.
Yeah.
Because if I can be perfectly honest, when it comes to, we're off dragons right now, but what's the dream of a D&D party? To play from level 1 to level 20 with the same characters, survive, be big damn heroes.
I've heard
right?
stories, but I've never seen it happen.
Right. So, Dan, how many characters have you built?
Oh, have I built? Thousands.
That are never going to get the light of day. I don't need more options. I need better support for the options we already have.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so this is why I'm excited for Fizzbands coming out, right? Because this is going to beef up our dragons. It's not going to add, so did you know that dragons can plane shift and here's 6 new different draconic planes? We're not going to get that nonsense. We're going to get, here's 2 new fairy dragons, here's some information about red dragon mating, and it's all the shit that we got in 4th edition of like lore and a couple of cool new mechanics. I expect that the Gemstone dragons will be closer to what you were talking about than what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Because Matt Colville, as great as he is third party. He's operating outside of the realms of what Wizards of the Coast has to option. I love 3.5. Well, fuck, am I glad that it's done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things I look back at it fondly, but I look back at it.
I had a load of fun when I was in grade 10. I never want to go back to that shit. Never in my life do I want to be 15 again.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun when I was 15. No fucking thank you.
Not doing that again.
Anything else we want to add to dragons? I think we've kind of covered everything.
That was awesome. That's all I want to add.
Look, there's so much other stuff out there. If you can get your hands on an old book.
Oh, keep in mind, we're not talking about 1st edition or 2nd edition dragons. I know there are listeners who are like diehard 2nd edition
get
guys.
yourself in Value Village. I swear, I don't go anywhere else for books now.
Oh, yeah.
You'll get 50 cents each. It's the best.
But no, you're right. 1st and 2nd edition, though, but you've got to rework all of the math.
Yeah.
Right? It's easy for me to say, oh, you know what? It's a CR 17 from 3.5. I can kind of break that down to what a CR 17 should look like mechanically by the numbers.
Yeah.
You can't do that with THACO.
No, you really
Right?
can't.
You've got to re-engineer the entire damn thing. So, I don't know. My final thought with dragons is, remember, the dragons that we get in the monster manual are the basic templates.
Yeah.
They don't say that, but every other dragon you run into everywhere else in every single one of the modules has an additional thing about them.
Give your dragons additional things.
Yes, whether it's lore or mechanics, the monster manual is the tip of the iceberg. It's the beginning of the thought. It's not the whole thought.
Right.
Yeah. That'll be it for this discussion on dragon powers. But there's lots of other pieces of lore in Dungeons & Dragons, so subscribe or follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations and insights we'll have for you in the future. Next week, we'll be heading to one of the most popular cities in Faerun, Baldur's Gate.
And if you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, www.itsamimic.com, as well as a store for some awesome merch. We also rely on word of mouth to get news of the podcast out there to the community, so please pass the word to everyone you know that we're available on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, as well as most podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Thank you for listening to another It's a Mimic production. Inquiries, shoutouts, requests, and mailbag questions can be sent to info@itsamimic.com.
Okay, so you guys got a chance to dig around in the previous editions. I mean, I know Matt Colville, but and I know Dan, you know 3.5. You have a love-hate relationship with 3.5. I get it.
That's more love than hate.
More than love, yeah. But still, Terry, this is the first time you've dug through 4th edition lore and stats and shit. How was that for you?
There's different types of D&D editions, apparently. Well, I didn't go into the rules or anything. I was just prepping for the episode, so it was a lot of lore stuff. I thought it was interesting because I got more details, I got more information from it. So I was interested in that way, but I didn't explore it to the point where 4th edition has pissed me off for any reason because I didn't experience it. But it was I'm such a loyalist with things. I didn't like it. I like to stick with what I know. I like enjoying variety in my everyday life, but once I'm stick with what I like, I don't like to tempt myself with other things.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the stat blocks and they've got like different symbols for different kinds of attacks and shit,
You're like, what the fuck's a
It's all
utility
wrong.
power?
It's all wrong. But somebody who's, I don't know if you guys ever get this, where if you're bought into 5th edition 100% now, or if you still just wish it was kind of like 3.5 with text layouts and tables and things. But for me, I was like, no, this is wrong. This is why you're doing this wrong. This makes no sense. Stop showing me different faces of dice. Just say 5 to 6 or something on a recharge. Just fucking like I fixed it for them, Adam. That's what I did. It took 4th edition. By the time I was done, I said, don't worry, I fixed it. And what I created was 5th edition.
For 3.5, honestly, there is a very special place in my heart for 3.5 because I played it from release all the way up until they canceled it. And then I played Pathfinder, which was basically 3.5 with polish. So like I have a lot of love for this system. It's an interesting dichotomy as being a veteran player who grew up with 3.5 and then is now playing 5th exclusively, where I really have a lot of fond memories of 3.5, but dear God, is it a convoluted mess of just random shit. I got into it a little bit, but yeah, I cannot iterate enough how convoluted and weird and involved every little aspect of mechanics is in 3.5 compared to 5e. Like 5e is far more open, which is great.
You know what I miss in stat blocks? The one thing that I miss? Loot drop information.
Yeah. I also miss the different classification for abilities that 3.5 had. It was either supernatural ability or an extraordinary ability or something else like that, which gave you information onto what kind of resistances would apply to said ability. I miss that.
Yeah, but that's just too fucking complicated.
I understand it's too complicated.
That's
but
that level of nonsense. Just because I sat there coming up with the notes, like Terry's never seen a 4th edition stat block before. I'm gonna send him some notes about what to look for. So I'm digging through it and I'm like, God, I gotta relearn this shit. It is so dense and so weird and right. It says this and this and this in the stat block. What does that mean again? Right. I also miss from 4th edition the fact that every monster has a classification like lurker or
brute.
Yeah, like that really helps just with the strategy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because especially if you're a newer DM, you're going in not understanding anything. But at least if it says minion or something, you're like, I know my role. You know.
Yeah.
Direction. That's what I like.
To know that they snatch, this whole snatch mechanic is a little itty bitty like paragraph.
No, the mating stuff was in.
Different kind of snatch.
Okay.
The grabbing mechanics that all
that might have been the
dragons
grossest we've ever been on this podcast. Well, top 5. Well, top 12.
Thanks for listening. Bye.